All right, I will call to order the December 1st meeting of the Board Finance Subcommittee. All members are present. I will first go to public comment on non-agenda and agenda items. Are there any public comments?
No public comment cards submitted.
Seeing no public comments, we'll move to discussion action. First item up A is our fiscal stabilization plan update. Luce, I believe you are presenting. Oh, you're muted.
I think it's on our end.
Oh, hold on.
Is the owl? And you're connected to that one? Mm-hmm. Okay, will you try again, Liz? Is there? Sort of hear her, but not really. They're both showing the owl? Will you try again? She's been talking. Do you want to try switching now to me? And let me, second one. Okay, Luce, do you want to try again? No, I can hear absolutely nothing. Let me try disconnecting the owl from the, or let me try not having the owl for the speaker. Okay, Luce, will you say something again? I don't know if it, because I tried even switching off of the owl.
The owl doesn't look, I don't see eyes.
Blue things.
Yeah, let's try.
Still Thanksgiving.
I know, right? Good. I should come on there. Doesn't seem to be doing that. I don't know how to do this. Yeah, we can. Yeah, now we can see you. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, everyone.
Yes, Liz, let's try that.
You're gonna try connecting with something?
And she's gonna try logging off and back on to see if that's the issue.
Sorry.
I forgot the camera was on. Well, it's because I realized that I didn't have the camera on and turned it on.
Oh, right, when I turned it up and
Yes.
down.
Sorry. Of course, technical difficulty.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Yep.
Yep, now we can hear you.
Yay. Always got to go with it. Turn it off and on again. Are we good for me to begin? Or do we need? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know why the owl isn't catching everybody right
It's all
now. But go ahead.
Okay. So I'm going to start off just with a high level update of where we are with the work of developing a fiscal stabilization plan for the organization. We're working hard at identifying potential budget solutions. As I've noted before, right? It's that combination of we need some solutions that are going to help with cash. We need some solutions that are going to help with restoring our fund balance. And we're going to need some solutions that are going to help us eliminate that structural deficit we have in our budget. The focus for today is going to be on some items that are intended to help us with resolve the structural deficit. So these are ongoing potential solutions that we're looking to identify. And I'll start off with one that I know is of significant interest to folks, and that's the reduction and the restructuring of the district office. So to date, and I want to emphasize that. So to date, we're not done, but it's where we are to date, is we've identified potential solutions totaling about $2.1 million. That's about 1.3 million in unrestricted and about 0.8 million in restricted resources. These potential solutions consist of reductions primarily within education services, within special services, and wellness and engagement, and does include some HR as well. Management costs make up 100% of those savings. As I noted earlier, these potential solutions will address the structural deficit, and so they are ongoing in nature. And these potential solutions we plan to present to the board for action on December 10th. I noted that it's a work in progress, and a big part of that work in progress is attempting to determine, I think it's an if and a how. Lisa, correct me. Otherwise, how we might be able to consolidate education services, special services, and wellness and engagement into a single unit. That's the sort of work that's easier in conversation. It's harder to get down on paper, and so we're working our way through what does that look like, so that it's a consolidation that can actually withstand the test of time. It's a consolidation where we're really clear on what the work is that we're going to continue to do, the work that we prioritize, and what are some of those stop do's that have to be set aside, at least for the immediate future. Another batch of solutions that we're working hard at identifying are the reductions to staffing at school sites. And this takes two different shapes. So one is actual school site staffing that is at a school site allocated strictly to a school site. And then we have services that are dispersed essentially from central office. And so there are support services provided to school sites. The emphasis here though is these are services that serve students or provided to students. So to date, for both school site staffing plus staffing that supports school districts, we've identified about $3.5 million worth of potential solutions. 2.8 million of that is on the unrestricted side, 0.8 million is on the restricted side. Again, those are ongoing, and so they would help address the structural deficit. This would include some significant items that we're accustomed to seeing at the school sites, and we'll be able to address those in further detail in time for the February board meeting, which is when we would ask the board to take action on those items. Until then, we'll continue to refine those FTE, refine what they do, refine what services exactly would be eliminated for students. And the last big picture item I want to note is the maximizing the use of restricted resources. These are solutions that are not going to address our structural deficit, or at least these that I'm going to talk about today are not going to address our structural deficit. They will help us restore our reserves, our fund balance. And so to date, we are looking to make use of about $4.3 million of the new dollars we received this year. These potential solutions will go to the board as information on December 10th. And in addition, we've identified about 3.2 million in Medi-Cal and 0.2 million in old fund balances that we have from the past for expenditure shifts. And these potential solutions we plan that will go to the board in February. These, again, this last batch does not address the structural deficit, but they do help us restore our ending fund balance, which is one of those pieces for us that's important for this year to be able to show the county that we are working hard to improve our financial position in the current fiscal year and not waiting to resolve everything in the next fiscal year. We are continuing to work in the other areas that we've described for the board as primary areas, including reduction of supplemental pay. The board has already taken action on some of those items, as so has cabinet. And so things like the suspension of the vacation leave payouts. We'll tighten what that figure is going to be able to look like for us this year. We did make some payouts throughout in the earlier part of the year before we started identifying this one as a potential solution. And so we'll recognize what the actual savings will be for us in the current year. And this will extend over into the next couple of years in our multi-year projection. And so we'll tighten what that number looks like. I'm going to pause there because that was a lot and I can't see faces. So why don't I pause there and see if there are any questions, any thoughts. High level, though, I want to note that, right, we're looking at that about a $15 million mark for ongoing reductions to resolve the structural deficit. We've so far identified about 5.6 million of potential solutions. That's combined unrestricted and restricted. I know I've heard in the past folks ask the question of, well, why restricted if we're going to have to spend the money anyways? There's no question that we have to spend the money anyways. It's the how do we spend it? If we can eliminate administrator positions that are charged to, for example, Title I, it means it opens up those dollars to be able to take something else and move it and transfer it into those restricted dollars. And so it allows us to be able to have other shifts come in so that we don't have to eliminate other positions that are on the unrestricted side. And I'll pause there for any comments, any questions, any thoughts.
None of these sounded like they were addressing the cash flow part of the fiscal stabilization plan. Do you have a summary or an update on that part, that bucket?
Nothing new from the last time we talked about it. The only piece I can add that's just a little bit new that we've been able to refine a little bit is we have actually now that I think about it, I think I might have mentioned this the last time. We have some grants that are they're expected to expire by the end of the fiscal year. And we've gotten some clarity on the difference between having to be spent versus having to be encumbered. And so for those where if the requirement is merely to be encumbered, that will help our cash flow. And so we're working with it's our director of CNS who's actually got a nice $1 million balance that I'm looking at to help us essentially hold on to it for as long as we can and not actually expend it until we really truly need to expend it. We can get it encumbered, but that's $1 million of cash that otherwise we would have to send out the door that we think we're going to be able to hold on a little bit longer.
And then when you spoke about the maximizing restricted resources, that helping with our reserve balance, is that in time to help us with the cash flow part of the considerations this year?
For the ones that I mentioned, those are going to help our fund balance. They will not help our cash necessarily, because those are expenditures we would have had. We're just going to shift unrestricted essentially into the restricted. And so it doesn't help cash flow, it helps our fund balance.
And then were all of these numbers on top of the actions we've already taken as far as administrative concessions and those things, or are they including those actions?
They are, so the ongoing ones I mentioned are all on top of.
Small question. Mark? Anything else for this? Is there any feedback you need from us in preparing for the board presentation on this item?
No feedback, just a little just a thought in my mind as this becomes more and more real, right? This is hard. It's going to get harder. And so being able to, ask questions as they come up is important. I think sometimes for some of these questions, it's easier to have a conversation than to engage in back and forth email. And so I encourage you, if a question comes up, if you've got some thoughts, please don't hesitate to reach out. Happy to meet, happy to have a conversation, because this is really, really hard work.
Okay, I think my only Mark.
Sorry, I did have one thing. Which I know when we spoke last week, I know it was vacation, so you may not have time to look at it, but we had talked about, I know you were still looking over some contracts that we may be able to suspend and or find a way to break those contracts. Did you have any luck going over or finding any of those, or still looking?
We're still looking. I need to engage in conversations with the directors. I'm close to having my list of the ones that are question marks for me. But I need to have conversations with the directors who are managing those contracts before I can present something as a potential solution. So it's a work in progress. Thank you for that. Appreciate all of the thoughts and the feedback that you had on that.
Okay, thanks.
My one piece of feedback is we're now getting in the place where we're making the decisions and talking about future ones, is making sure that we have a very clear and easy way to track what we've done, and what we think that's going to mean versus what we're planning and what, in decisions to come. So if there's a way for like the concessions that we already voted on, the 400,000 roughly in savings, having that contextualized when we receive these reports in writing, so that we then know, are we adding on, are the things we're just considering adding on to it in our progress towards our goals. And then if we have changes that become deltas, last year, for instance, in the middle of the discussion is when we got the news for the SELPA, and we were all talking about the $2 and then $4 million changes from SELPA. Having the ability to then show that in the same tracker of here's if something that's changed. So, if we have another thing that comes up that costs us $500,000, it doesn't create the appearance that the actions of the concessions had no impact, because the impact is there. But I think we need to be at a place where we're very clearly in writing for each of these updates here and at the board, showing the decisions that have been made, what they mean, new information that may be adding costs, what that means, and just really making it real simple.
Yeah, absolutely. We had one of those. The change in the COLA is anticipated based on the LAO report. We won't actually know until the governor releases the budget, but that's one that's on the radar.
And we won't really know until June, what that COLA is.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
So
Yeah.
we'll spend the money, which I love about this way of doing business. But yeah, I'm thinking something real simple, like it can be a Word doc. Administrative concessions, this much money expected, change in COLA, this was the change, and then it just changes what our total targets are for the buckets.
Like plus minus.
Plus minus, a nice simple, sum function at the end, like nothing fancy, just
Yeah,
something
it sounds a
real
lot
simple.
like my hit fund balance list.
Yeah,
I think so.
yeah, something really simple, and that way we can also, as the board, see what we've done and what may have changed that that wasn't because what we did wasn't effective. It's just that something else may have changed the
Something else
target.
happened.
Things,
Gotcha.
which I'd love to also backdate to show from I don't know, about December of last year, if possible. So, any other comments, questions? Any other feedback you can think of that would be beneficial at this point?
Not at this point. Keep an open mind.
What is our confidence level in our current strategies for the cash flow issue?
Very high. We're able to get to, I've got, I think it's sort of explained about multiple layers. The first layer are the capital funds. Those capital funds are looking like, they will allow for greater balances than what I was originally, establishing. I was establishing them at like a 50% level. It looks like we'll be able to have larger balances there than I originally thought. I'm realizing as I'm saying this, I have not shared with the board, the layers, and so I will do that later this evening. You'll be able to see the 3 layers that we've established. FigMet has had a chance to review. The county has had a chance to review. Our next step in just solidifying it further so that everybody has full confidence on it is for each of the funds that is a layer of protection, we have to prepare a cash flow projection for those individual funds, right? And so essentially being able to show we will have these balances. Here's how we plan on spending. We reached out to FigMat for support in that area, and they're putting together an agreement for us on that service to be able to provide support for Joel and team to prepare those cash flow projections for all of the other funds. I haven't asked the county yet, but I will be asking the County Office of Ed if this is a cost they can help support us with. And I will keep you updated on what the response is.
And so when you say very high, that is a very high confidence that we won't need a loan from the state. We still have other things, that's just this year part of it.
Thank you for asking the question. So it's very high confidence that we are prepared to scrape at the bottom of the barrel, roll over every rock, just squeeze every penny for dollars, for cash to be available to the district within our own means, so we don't have to borrow from the state. I really want to emphasize here, It doesn't mean that borrowing the way we've developed those layers is a good idea. It means that we've figured out how to ensure that we will not have to do the worst idea, which is borrow on an emergency loan from the state, right? That's the worst idea. But we've figured out a bunch of other less worse ideas to be able to ensure that we will have enough cash to meet our financial obligations. Did I
Any other
lose
questions?
everybody? There,
No,
No,
Here we
no,
go.
that was great clarification. Any other questions? All right, we'll move to item 3B, discussion action, or just discussion on our SELPA update. John Fisher.
Sure. Where we are currently, we've been moved out of our phase 1 or phase 1A of our study, and we're looking in a sort of finer grained study with respect to the fiscal piece of SELPA, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well as the program. And we're working with F3 at this point for advice on the legal and procedural requirements with that, and currently in communication both with SELPA and the County Office of Education. So let me dive into a little bit more detail. And the approval of a SELPA by the state is contingent upon the state having confidence in us that we can provide a continuum of services for all students. Generally speaking, we're in pretty good shape with respect to that because we have a very wide continuum of services. That said, we currently have students that are served outside the district. Among other services, we all know the DHH program at Hidden Valley, which is funded through the SELPA. So that's a piece that would have to be negotiated. We currently have, out of the 18 students, 5 of the 18 are Santa Rosa City School students. 13 are from outside the district. I would say my hope would be that we would be able to keep that program through an inter-SELPA agreement since we've set up the program and infrastructure, et cetera. In addition to that, in that area, we also have students that are served itinerant DHH services. These are students who have part of hearing services, but may have a general education placement or some other placement, and they are served by SCO itinerant staff who essentially consult and do some service for the students, so typically about once a month, both with their equipment, et cetera. Our count for the elementary and secondary districts together is 45 students, and we would anticipate to meet the needs of those students, we would hire probably 2 FTE to be able to do that. So that's an additional cost. In addition to that, SCO provides services for visually impaired students in the same way for specialized vision services. We have about 10 students who receive that service. 10 students is not enough in my estimation for us to hire a teacher and build the program. So we would likely hopefully be able to do an MOU with the county office to serve those students. Just as an aside, they currently serve students on an inter-SELPA agreement from Marin County, which is in the same situation of having too few students to run a program. Then the other piece, we currently have 20.5 students placed with SCO in special day class, medically fragile or specialized health programs, et cetera. We share a student with Roanoke Park, currently hence the 0.5. Approximately, I believe 5 of those students are in transition programs and will be aging out. Best estimation is based on our current programs, we could probably serve all but about 5 students from that with respect to medically fragile students, and that would potentially require an MOU with SCO. Now, that said, we're already paying SCO for those students currently in the SELPA under fee for service. Our program managers are looking at the IEPs for those students to determine how many or all of them, if we can serve within our programs. And then in addition to that, there are various timelines that have to be met for forming a SELPA. And that includes the big piece of that is developing a local plan, and CDE has a local plan template, which it essentially guarantees that the SELPA is going to be able to guarantee services to a wide continuum of, of, of students. So that's a process, but it's, given that CDE currently has a template for it, and I went through this process when I was working at SELPA, so it's pretty straightforward. And then that documentation would be submitted to CDE, and they would make a decision on that. We have, how would I put it? We may not necessarily be aligned with the current SELPA and the county in terms of our intentions. I don't want to go too far into detail. But I think as I said, we are working with legal counsel to make sure we cross our T's and dot our I's with respect to SELPA formation. And we should have sufficient information for the board to be able to make a decision about whether to go forward. I believe our commitment to SELPA was as early as possible, but that we would commit to notifying SELPA of our final decision in January.
Yeah, no later.
No later than January, and ideally earlier than that, because our leaving the SELPA when we have 24% of the ADA of the SELPA right now has a significant impact on the SELPA revenue, both from an operations standpoint and from a programmatic standpoint. One other point, sort of a detailed point, is SELPA operations are currently funded mostly through program specialist regionalized services dollars. If we were to form our own SELPA, again, those dollars would flow to us, and that's part of our calculation. I think our calculation is in the neighborhood of 300,000 or so for us to maintain or develop our own SELPA operations. Looking at the numbers, there's some a little bit of uncertainty with respect to a couple of funds, and one is the SELPA high cost pool, which was developed a couple of years ago, and it takes what used to be called ERMS dollars, educationally related mental health service dollars, which those funds now are direct funded to the district. And the SELPA developed a program where each district would contribute to a pool, and then for certain high cost placements, the districts could apply for reimbursement. Last year, I think we put in $1.6 million potential reimbursements, and through the approval process, we ended up with $530,000. And it was funded at a 43% rate. I know that's a lot of numbers at this point, but the claims exceeded the size of the pool. And so there are discussions with SELPA about that pool. And so that's a potential loss of some money with respect to that pool. That said, go ahead.
What was our contribution?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly where I was going. Approximately 24% of our ERMS dollars went to SELPA, and I want to say it was aggregate in the mid 200,000s for both districts, and then the charters are calculated separately, but that's a piece of it as well. If under the new plan, when they're considering expanding the pool to $2.5 million, it's expected that it would take almost 50% of our, again, ERMS dollars, which, as I said, a little background on ERMS, educationally related mental health services, which was special ed money, but as of somebody who's going to, from fiscal, can probably correct me on this, but was opened up to spend on general education, mental health services 4 or 5 years ago, and then was now is direct funded to the district. It used to be funded through the SELPA. So there's a little bit of uncertainty with respect to that. The other piece in the SELPA fiscal allocation plan, which was in some ways motivated our looking at the SELPA formation of our own SELPA a little more closely because of the fiscal hit we're taking from it. But as part of that, there is a $50,000, I'm going to call it a credit at this point, for medically fragile students placed with the county office. And my, again, current estimates is we would have in the neighborhood of 5 students placed with the county office. So again, that's a potential negative fiscal impact if they decide to continue with that next year. One other point I want to mention are how well we do under our own SELPA is somewhat contingent on our ADA. The more ADA we have, the bigger difference it makes from, did I say that right? The bigger difference it makes in forming our own SELPA. So that's, again, we rely on the best projections we can make, but that's going to have a significant impact as well. Also, I will say generally a concern, there's a lot to do in preparing and getting the SELPA ready to go and so forth. Oh, and then one last thing, and I think it's non-trivial, is there's a time and opportunity cost associated with SELPA at this point. I'm looking at our interim superintendent who has goes to superintendent council meetings about 8 or 9 times a year, something of that nature, and I'm a significant number of meetings. So again, that's I'll say a time benefit, but ultimately that's a potentially fiscal benefit as well.
With what you know at this stage, does it still look like it would be a net savings for the district and an operational benefit?
I would say at this point, cautiously, yes.
It's the
But
simple
I'm in
mechanism.
the realm of
Keep on going.
Yeah, I again, I'll defer to some other folks, but it's the question is at the decision points we have, is there sufficient information that we should continue to pursue it? And at this point, I would say cautiously, yes.
Bruce is a little less cautious.
Okay,
I'm getting a full
fair
thumbs
enough.
up.
That may be
I
my-
am proceed, keep going. I think this is a potentially very smart move, very strategic move for the district.
Okay.
Question?
It's the on the aggressive side of a timeline, say if everything proceeds in January, what are we looking at? Like, I don't know if it takes 4 years, 3 years, 2 years.
So as of now, our notification is to form our own SELPA and open up shop as our own SELPA as of July 1st, 2026.
Okay.
I'm going to say there are potentially some pieces of it. Like, are we going to bring back some additional SCO students and so forth? That might be where we could potentially phase in over a couple of years, but again, the intent at this point would be to again open up shop as of July 1st, 2026. And then if we're not able to do that, then we would be looking at 26, 27.
But that would be timed with the second year of the phase in of the
Yeah.
cut of the cuts.
I think that's exactly right, and it would be more time to, my concern in some areas is building our own programs. However, I will say the big one now is the DHH itinerant, and that is SCO teachers who travel around to various sites, such as Santa Rosa High School. There's a student who has DHH services, and they travel around, visit the student in the classroom, check that their equipment's working, et cetera, et cetera. That said, I don't think it's a very complicated program to introduce that piece. A full medically fragile program, possibly a little bit more time than that. And I don't know that we have enough students to justify a full medically fragile program.
And that type of thing could also be combined with other innovations around DHH.
That, yes, exactly. And one last piece, I mean, this is speculative at this point, but given that we're currently serving 23 students on our fee for service model from other districts, there are potential options for building increased partnerships with other local districts, at least in the special education realm, that's going to provide those, I'll say, economies of scale, and that's not difficult. It doesn't make much difference whether we're on SELPA or part of SELPA in terms of those arrangements.
Less than 12 months ago, I think you're targeting the goal of 10 students in that, and now you're already over 20. So.
So far, so good. We're at the point in some cases, we don't have space and we have to turn down. And that's pretty significant because once you get to that point, and we always have to reserve space for a Santa Rosa City Schools student. To me, the analog is an inter-district transfer. That is, we want to make sure that there's space for, I'll say, homegrown Santa Rosa City students for our program. So we need to be a little bit careful, even with the fee for service model.
I don't have any questions. Anything else on SELPA? Our next, is this coming to the board in December or?
We expect to have,
Yeah.
a recommendation.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
in
That's
December.
our expectation for. Yeah, is the meeting correct?
Yeah, we're hoping to have it ready by Friday to be able to
Yeah.
move forward
That's- yeah.
with a recommendation to the board on the 10th. So we're working hard to get that finalized.
Okay. I look forward to reading that packet. All right, no other questions on SELPA, Jenny? Questions on SELPA? Right, we'll move to item C, the parcel tax preview.
So I don't have as much of an update as I was hoping to have today, or we do have, we're working with 3 different pieces to it. We have our resolution, for board consideration, mostly drafted. However, that will depend on structure. And so we have, Greg Isom and Charles Heath working on structure. Charles, because he has done this work for the district in the past, did, provide a flat rate, option for us for this year, to be able to do the work with we have not asked for any polling services or anything like that, but really pulling back to say, okay, how should this be structured with the information that we'll get from Greg Eisen on what's available on a per square foot basis, and how should that be structured between the high school district and the elementary district. So we're hoping to have that maybe by the end of this week for conversation next week, for December 10th is what I'm really hoping for. I don't want to say absolutely because they're still working through the details of that.
I think the 17th is okay.
Yeah.
So it's pushing a lot of things to the 10th.
It is, absolutely it is.
Well, that would be my feedback. Any questions on where we're at with the development of this? I mean, I'd rather wait and have, especially information about what revenue can be raised under different scenarios with the assessor's
If that's what
information.
we're shooting for, I'm happy to make
Yeah.
that adjustment to give a little more time.
We have breathing room on taking action, so I don't
Yeah,
see this as being an urgent.
true. We do have the last date for action would actually be June.
Yeah.
For the board to take action to put it on the ballot.
My thoughts are the 17th or even January, first meeting in January would be, depending on, there to have all the information we actually need. Agree?
I agree.
I agree, 10th is getting crowded.
Yeah.
It is getting very crowded. And the 17th will be
Awesome.
crowded as well.
Design. It's.
Okay. All right.
All right. Any questions? We'll move to D, which is discussion on a proposed update to board bylaw 9322. The attachment for this isn't on here because we walked it back a bit from my very robust draft to want to actually have a top level conversation about the intent of this. And so 9322 is our agenda, setting board policy. And specifically what I want to propose is a bylaw amendment that adds in a financial disclosure, in revises our current financial disclosure process to add some type of graphical element that has a chart or something that makes it clear how an item we're considering is being spent against budgets and things that are approved versus things that may be new expenditure requests when the board receives it. And then also add an element of transparency as to whether or not those expenses are putting us in a place where other approved strategies, plans, programs may not be feasible within that budget. So, essentially a check as to when we're making expenditures to make sure that we're not unintentionally making a choice that then makes it so other things are then not feasible later on. I think, well, the holiday week also counts for part of it, but that's the concept of wanting to start developing this board policy. It's a part of what I've heard from the community, part of I think some of the things that we've all expressed, and I'm trying to figure out how we want to, as the board, actually receive financial information on within the documents and within the votes and decisions we're making.
Like some of the things that are on the consent items, like for expenses.
Well, the difference
contract
between
expenses.
like an expense item where I think a graphical element could improve it, where it just shows that this is an expense being charged against this already approved budget and is already planned, which is
Yeah.
what
Okay.
most of what we have on consent. It
Right.
would help simplify those conversations because we'd show that it's on consent because we already approved it.
Right.
But I think the nuance of it more is actually the action items that come to us, where we could be approving something that sounds great and is new or has a small immediate expense, but it could be eating up resources that then are going to something else that we actually view as part of our priorities. That's where the more of the nuance is. And so, yeah, I mean, so it's how do we, I have felt and heard that not just me, but a lot of the board would like more clarity on it within the items. This discussion is intended to start what we mean by that. What is it actually that we're thinking of that would give us the clarity we need while not creating an enormous bureaucratic burden, by getting us more than we get.
Do you have an example of like something you've seen on other boards, agendas or something like that, or?
Yeah, so the graphic element, the board of supervisors actually for the county adopted a spreadsheet kind of model where I think it would be great for the consent items and expenditures because it does exactly that. It shows spent against budget. So I've seen it there. LA, there's 3 or 4 other districts that have various versions of these types of additional disclosures.
Yeah, imagine
Yeah.
we're not inventing the wheel here. I'm sure
We're not, but
something like this elsewhere. We can.
we're not, but I think it depends on what our intent is.
Sure.
I think that's the important part of today's discussion is, for me, when I think about what I want to see, yes, this is against an approved budget or we're now in consent and we're just executing what we've already approved. And when we're up in action, I want to understand the impacts that decision may have against other priorities and other considerations that we have. But that's just where my intent is coming from on that. And I know you've mentioned, I know we've heard from other board members that there's a concern. So part of starting with intent instead of the specific recommendation is what is it that we actually mean? Because there's not a clear best practice.
Yeah.
So I think that's where Lisa and I didn't get a chance to talk about it, but I'm sure if we did, it's where we all would have landed at what do we mean when we want more transparency in our budget decisions? And so we'll stop talking, the two of you talk about what we mean when we want more transparency in our budget decisions.
I like the concept. I am obviously thinking about, burden on the staff. Especially, if we're gonna be making cuts, then people are already getting spread more thin. So I'd be interested in more specifics of what we're asking staff to do, who has to do it, and how they feel about this added workload. That makes sense.
We started the conversation today in cabinet about, what would this look like? You know, what are some ideas? We have some internal processes already that, you know, we're looking at this and saying, okay, we could probably take something that we already do and, you know, kind of reformat that a little bit to, that would answer many of the questions. But there definitely would be times where it would be an increase in, you know, the processing or the time to complete an item. And so that is just something to be aware of, is that there is an impact then on how quickly we get things processed through or how quickly things come to the board once there's a request for something. Definitely appreciate, understand, and agree with the concept as far as the why and what we're looking to accomplish with this. Again, I do want to be very mindful of resources, you know, limited resources that we have, but I do think that the more clarity we can provide the board and the public on, you know, what it is that we've looked at. You know, there are often times where we evaluate multiple things against each other before coming to the board. That isn't always included in the recommendation when it comes forward. So even if there's a little check mark that yes, we've evaluated other items, or no, we haven't, and here's why, you know, the things like that. I think the more that we can put it into a graphic and have it just, you know, fill in the blanks makes that time piece of it less.
Is there a threshold that we're considering for this?
This is our first conversation about it. And so this is, my intent is that we try and drive this forward by the beginning of the year and maybe have it approved actually the board in February. But to be deliberate about what it is we recommend in order to balance things such as resource concern against the value to the board being able to make one form decisions.
Right.
And the public being able to see them, which I think there's, you know, substantial value there. So this is conversation one. So
Is there an expense threshold that you were thinking about? That makes sense. In
We
your
haven't had
mind?
that discussion yet. One of the things that I would say is if we're thinking of so if I'm going to approve something, you know, that's within my limit of the 15,000, I'm already going through those processes. But to document that for, you know, have everybody document for every one of those, that's probably not time value of money, probably not efficient. Yeah, so I think that's something that we need to have a discussion about as far as when that makes sense to make that recommendation. So we would have something to be able to recommend for January, I would think.
Okay.
I'm wondering if there's some kind of graphic template that could be used where there like key pieces of information that we need that can just be popped into, like what part of the budget it comes from, how much it costs, what was budgeted for.
Yeah, that's where we have some things that are already in existence that we think we could modify to meet that, or at least to meet a portion of that.
I'm going to chime in just a couple of thoughts. I think high level, when I read through the list, it's about, the question is, what is the fiscal impact of this item? Fair question, good question. I think I would strongly prefer that we edge toward a checkoff list. Is it one time? Is it ongoing? What's the funding source, right? Like it is, we're thin and we're getting thinner. And I think I heard a potential start date of January or February. I would ask you to make it a little later than that. Like we've got to get through
board action for considering a template in.
Got it. Thank you, because my heart it started beating a little faster there. Like we've got to get through the solutions and then implementing the solutions, and all of that is really where the energy needs to be.
Fiscal year would be a logical operational start date, but the board taking action with enough time to implement is always
Got it.
something I want to be cognizant of. So, you know, it wouldn't necessarily be one where we approved it and then immediately enforced it the next week.
Okay.
You want to give time to implement.
I think we have some first draft ideas to be able to talk about.
I think going towards a checkbox graphic element is the intent. There's some desire to make sure that we're seeing the reasoning. But the current structure is just written, and a narrative, and it doesn't always make it clear. So the checkbox and graphic element is the part that I think would create easier to digest analysis.
Yeah, and with part of what I was thinking when I just had the checkbox is like you can have references to the source document, right? So if we have a contract that is implementing something that the board's already approved in the LCAP, right? That's where the rationale is, that's where the explanation is, that's where the funding source is. And so finding those ways of connecting the dots on everything that the board already approves and what is really truly just the implementation of it, I think is a place where we've got some room to be able to refine what we do and how we do it.
Absolutely.
And that would definitely help our consent calendar discussion.
Yes.
So, which is not the entire motivation, but is definitely one of the areas of genesis for this. So this is the beginning of these thoughts. So this is the best time for us to present our dreams of what we would see in these analysis to then get whittled down. So is there anything that we want to express before we get a draft back? That's fine.
I mean, like when looking at something, I would want to know what part of the budget does this come from and what other sorts of things come from that part of the budget. So that could be like a link to like.
Some information on what that budget line item.
Like what other, yeah. So I'm thinking, like, if I'm spending money on this, what other things am I potentially taking away from you?
Yeah.
So that's something, that we are looking at more closely is, okay, when you're bringing something forward, is this in place of something else? Is it in addition to, if it's a new expense, then what are we getting rid of? So thinking of those, the opportunity cost, is a piece of it. I do have concerns about us getting into too much detail on that because, yes, we need to be evaluating it and everything that we take the time to do the longer explanation on. That's where the opportunity cost as far as time value of money.
But I'm hearing a one-time kind of evergreen workflow where once you've written the description of what that budget line item can do, then that description can be used for every agenda item going forward.
Maybe I do have concerns sometimes with that because I think that there ends up being carryover language that is not actually evaluated then. That's, one of the things that, it was a request of the board that there be measurable outcomes listed on the consent items. And that's one of the questions that we have is, okay, when something's coming for renewal, did you actually review that? Some of it is really about just enforcement of our existing practices. And making sure that, we're taking the time and when something, if we're asking for is it really a measurement? That was weird.
I mean, if we're talking like a dream anything, then I also comparisons to other districts on what things cost.
Just brainstorm now. We don't have to talk them through.
And sometimes always helpful for me lately. My first question is like, are we legally required to provide this?
That's a great checkbox. I like that.
Oh, is that what this?
Mhm.
Well, the intent,
Must do versus nice to,
yeah,
kind of.
that type of.
well, I mean, very specifically, if it's a legal mandate, also knowing which law, honestly, federal, state. You know, is this a federal mandate? Is this a state mandate? Is it a grant?
And is it our only way to meet that mandate?
So all good thoughts, and we will talk about the feasibility of implementation of them when we bring back a recommendation.
There's a place between perfection and where we are today that we're gonna get to by the end of this process. So, perfect. All right. Anything else in this one? All right, we are all here, so let's approve some minutes and then go into close session.
Oh.
Oh, sorry, proposed dates for the remainder of the school year. So this is essentially the first Monday of each month. We would still reserve the discretion to bump a couple of these. I very specifically included the January one in here because there is very likely going to be something that we need to do between these two December board meetings and January and February. But I would say that that meeting would be canceled if there wasn't something new for us to review after the board meetings. But I want to hold the time because there's obviously a lot of big actions for the board to take, especially in February and March. And then I want to flag that April 6th is Easter Monday. So if we wanted to adjust that date, we could express that interest now and then look at adjusting it a little bit closer.
I'm looking at that kind of thing. Oh, let's see, September, it's Labor Day. Monday, it's September 2026,
This just takes us through June.
just through June, so don't too far. Yeah,
All right, any objection? No. All right, no objection. We'll adopt these as presented unanimously. All right, now let's approve some minutes. Is there a motion to approve September 8th?
for which one?
Yeah. which one?
Trustee Kirby was absent for the September 8th meeting.
Okay, Roxanne, do you have any objection to approving September 8th?
No objections.
All right, approved unanimously with one abstention. October 6th, was there an absent?
Yes, President McNally was absent.
Steve Kirby, any objection to approving October 6th?
No objection.
All right, approved unanimously with President McNally abstaining. And November 3rd. was
You
me.
were absent, yes.
So that means the two of you, do either of you have an objection to approving November 3rd?
No objection.
Okay, approved unanimously with me abstaining. There we go. With that, we will recess closed session. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Are we going, moving
So
rooms
I'm
or is
going
everyone else
to
going?
leave this room.
Today. Friday. I will not be here, Jamerson.
Okay, yes.
Am I good?
I guess it is recording.
I will reconvene from closed session. There are no items to report for action taken. And we'll now adjourn the December 1st, 2025 Board Finance Subcommittee meeting. Thank you.
5:31.
Stop it. Stop it.
Yeah, the same myself.